Hello, 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 Miss Sandy. I am fortunate enough to have you in this amazing appearance today. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Well, thank you, Ryan. I'm thrilled to be here. I am a professional speaker. I do keynotes for conferences. I do trainings at companies. I also do speech writing and speech coaching. So my business has expanded like that over the years. I've been in business for 24 years and I absolutely love what I do.
How did you get started? Because that's not I like to ask all the speakers I have on here that question because it's always somewhat of a different story. So what did that journey look like for you?
Well, I took a very circuitous route to speaking. And in fact, for a very long time, while I was getting the expertise that I speak on now, because I had jobs in different industries and different companies, I never even knew speaking was a profession that you could go into. But then at one point in my career, I decided to become a real estate professional and I got a coach. And I very quickly paid attention, did the marketing I needed to do, brought my business to top producer level. And when that happened, within a couple of years of starting that business, my coach had was going around to different conferences all over the country and asked me to sit on his top producer panels. And so he would bring me around to different conferences and I would tell people what I did to help build my real estate business. And people seemed to like what I had to say and how I said it. And so then I became a professional speaker within a couple of years after that. He asked me to join him in business. And while that partnership didn't last, by the end of my first year, I had 40 coaching clients. I loved what I did. Yes. And I said, well, if it didn't work, I could always go back to real estate. But luckily it did. And here I am 24 years later. I don't do real estate training anymore. I actually wanted to go and move over to the corporate market. So I now speak for conferences and corporations and organizations, associations, all that. So that's what I do now.
And how did you go about balancing the managing the business with 40 clients and professional speaking at the same time? What did that look like for you?
Well, that was a tough challenge because what I do is, when I do coaching, I do a 1 hour at a time. And for the real estate professionals, it was once every 2 weeks. So with 40 clients, what I had to do was do 20 clients per week because then the other 20 would be the next week. So I did 2 10-hour days 1 week to get those 20 done, usually on a Monday or Tuesday. And then the next Monday and Tuesday, I'd do 2 10-hour days again so that I could leave the rest of the weekend for speaking at conferences as I built that side of the business. So it was a lot of hours. It was a lot of work. And especially then when I decided to change. So I started shifting down the real estate training and coaching and shifting up the leadership, customer service, and the administrative professional side that I was doing for the corporate market. And so it was really trying to say, I don't want to lose all my income, but I had to find a way to replace that income on the new side as I shifted down on the other side. So I didn't lose my income. I did have a family to feed. So
Mhm. And how did you go about finding these speaking gigs, right? There may be some speakers out there. I know I've been in a place where this is super relevant. How do you even find a speaking gig? You're a professional speaker. What does that look like? What does that journey look like?
well, my first corporate one, I had found Toastmasters International at one point, which gave me an opportunity to meet new, different kinds of people, to practice my new speeches in a safe place without saying, okay, I can't practice this on a brand new client. I have to perfect that before I get there, or at least not perfect, but at least I have to master it. So I did that. And then through that process, I was introduced to other speakers who were in the National Speakers Association. So Toastmasters gave me an opportunity to practice my new stuff. So I didn't practice it on an audience. But then NSA, National Speakers Association, showed me how to build my speaking business. And
Mm.
I networked and connected with other speakers there. But, that was all well and good to learn, but I had to do my own marketing. I had to find my own gigs. They don't find things for you. It's just a matter of, it's amazing what you can learn from other speakers and cut your learning curve. But I found coincidentally or not. See, I'm a big believer in, if you really look for something and you really start getting into what you want to do, the things that are supposed to happen are going to fall in place. I don't think there are any such things as coincidences, because my very first speaking engagement for the corporate market was for an administrative professionals group. And I spent 20 years as an administrative professional. And so I didn't even think about talking to that group. I wasn't sure who I was going to talk to. So they said, go online and find conferences that have people who will be attending who need what you know, who need your expertise. So I did. I went online and I typed in, 2024 or whatever that year was, conferences. And coincidentally, like I said, or not, I lived in Orlando at the time. Right in my backyard at Disney was the Administrative Professionals Conference. It was coming to Orlando. I had the meeting planner's name and contact, email on that website. And I said, oh, I have a great program called No Risk, No Reward. I'm going to propose that because that's a great one. How I advanced my career as an admin to other things too, to leadership and customer service from taking risks, reasonable risks. So I emailed her and I said, here's who I am. Here's my background. I live in Orlando, so you don't have to pay travel expenses. I'm like, just thinking of anything I can to get them to say yes to me. And within 15 minutes, the meeting planner emailed me back and said, we love your background. We love your topic. And by the way, we have one slot left for a featured speaker. Would you like to take it? Yeah. And that conference was amazing because it was administrative professionals from all over the world, not even just the US, mainly US, but all over the world. And they were my perfect audience. They loved that program. I have built a career on starting out there and then learning, oh my goodness, conferences that have people who could hire me and who want what I have to say. I need to get in front of them because a company won't take me sight unseen. You're not going to get a Pepsi Cola or somebody like that to take you without even knowing you. Credibility is huge in this business. Yeah. But when their people see you at a conference and say, we saw her, we love her, she has what we need, then you can get hired. So my advice would be look for conferences, find your expertise, and develop a signature training module, breakout session, keynote, whatever it is. And then look for conferences, state, regional, national. If you get into a state organization, which is sometimes easier than getting to the national, well, once you get in there, then they can recommend you to the national. And there are 50 states. So you got 49 other prospects you can go to and say, hey, I just did this for so-and-so. It went very well. I'd love to do the same for your organization. And little at a time, oh my gosh, I am now at about a 90% referral and repeat business, and I am swamped. So,
and being at 90% referral and repeat, how many speaking gigs is that per month at this point?
Well, I do about 50 to 60 a year.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I know. I know some people say, I do 100 engagements a year. Oh my gosh, are you ever home? Like I don't want it. I always keep it between 50 and 60 is plenty because that's about one a week, but they don't spread themselves out evenly like that. Sometimes it's during the really heavy duty months, the spring and the fall when everybody's having conferences. I'll do 3 or 4 in a week and just go from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. And, and it's just flying all over. And because like for me in the administrative professional field, April, the last week of April, 4th week of April is administrative professionals week and day on that Wednesday. Well, at one point, everyone was trying to have their programs on that day. I had to throw away engagement after engagement after engagement, but I made relationships with other speakers in that arena. You'll do that. And then if I couldn't do it, I had some fantastic people to recommend to them. So I didn't just say to the meeting planner, oh no, tough noogies, I'm not available. I would say, oh, I'm so sorry. I just can't do that. But would you like some suggestions from me? I know lots of great people in this industry, and they are always very grateful. And if you help them like that year, very often they'll say, we're going to keep you in mind for next year because you were so good about this. And then they'll book you for the next year earlier so they get you. And so you can make some great relationships. And when they can't do an engagement, they can refer you. And so I have several speakers in a couple of different arenas that we do that all the time. So,
And how, this is a question for the other professional speakers out there. I was just talking to another professional speaker, and he was saying, yeah, after traveling around the world and speaking on enough stages, it gets really boring. And he said, just like everything, you do it again and again and again, whatever it is, it will get boring. And so I asked you the question, how do you, with all these speaking engagements you're speaking at, how do you keep your mental stability and still have that drive to get up, get on stage, deliver a powerful talk? How do you keep that energy on stage when you're doing so many?
luckily for me, I'm blessed with a lot of natural energy. In fact, as a child, I was never diagnosed, but I recognize in hindsight, I was hyperactive. So I am still pretty hyper. But first of all, I just keep in mind, I absolutely love what I do. I'm also a singer. I've done stage performances and acting, and I kind of liken it to an actor. When an actor has to do the same thing night after night after, you have to keep it fresh for that audience. They've only seen you once.
Mm.
You may have said this 1,000 times, but you have to remember that they're seeing you as if it's for the first time. So I just always focus on, how do I make sure that I hit that audience where they live, and I make sure that they walk away with something valuable? And for me, focusing on that and drawing energy from that crowd, every crowd is different. When I can draw that energy from that crowd, I mix it up. I'll take questions from the audience. I also ask the meeting planner ahead of time. I don't have a standard cookie cutter kind of thing, right? So I have so many modules to choose from that I'll ask them, what are the things that are the most important to you, and how much time have I got? And then I will custom tailor which ones I do. So I'm not saying the same thing the same way every single time. And then when I can take the questions and I can have fun with them, I look for opportunities to laugh with them. I'll let them ask me just about any question. Like one audience I had recently had a lot of younger people in it, and I'm 67. So it's tiring, but I love what I'm doing. And when they heard I was 67, they said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No, I'm not." And one of them blurted out, "Do you color your hair?" It's like, oh my gosh, that's something you normally wouldn't ask somebody you don't know, but I don't care. I told them, yes, I do, but I didn't have to start that till I was in my 50s. So, but and then they laughed. So I love to have fun, and I just want to be real with them. I don't ever want to come across stiff or stodgy or
Mm.
stuck up. It's just, you ask me something, if I don't want to answer, I'll make a joke and
Mm.
not answer. But usually whatever they want to know, I'll tell them.
Mm. And one thing that I'm learning is critical to be a top level global professional speaker is authenticity.
Yes.
When you're speaking on such specific subjects and topics, how do you go about maintaining that authenticity on stage as a speaker, having found your voice from the experience you have now? What does that look like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, at the beginning, when I didn't know the programs as well, I wasn't as authentic because I was too busy making a mistake, trying to memorize. You can't memorize because then you're focused so much on your script and you're in your head. And if you miss a word, oh my gosh, I missed a word. Who cares? They don't know your script. What you have to focus on, if you want to really be authentic, is your stuff. If they ask you a question on your expertise, you need to just be able to know that, and you should, or else you shouldn't be speaking on it. So don't worry so much about even when I do speech writing and speech coaching for other people, I'll tell them, look, we're going to write it out so we can get the sequence right. So you're not over there saying, oh, I did this and then they did, oh, I forgot to tell you I did this first. And then, no, we're going to get the sequence right. But there is very little I want you to memorize. I want you to know where you're going and know what you're saying, but you need to connect with the crowd, not with your words, if that makes sense to you. So that can really dampen your authenticity. And it did mine at the beginning. I had to say, wait, I can't even focus on the crowd because I'm too busy worrying about how many, which words I'm saying. So I got out of that real quick. So if you're new or you're changing your script and changing your topic, just be careful that you don't worry so much about the words and the script that you forget about the people and you don't connect with them.
And for you, I notice how every speaker asks this question. There's some similarities to their answer, but there are some differences, and I'm curious about the differences, if there are any. When you speak, is the strategy you use to connect with the audience, you pick 3 or 4 people sitting in the very front or in the second or third row, and you talk to one for 10 seconds or however long it is, then talk to the next. Everybody's listening. To them, it sounds like you're talking to one, meaning them, but you're really just talking to one person at a time. Or what strategies do you use to keep that one-to-one authenticity of your speaking engagement live?
I do. If someone's really smiling, whether they're in the front, the middle, the back, or whatever, and I can see them, that does give me energy as a speaker. So I will draw from their energy and I will come back to them every once in a while. But I try to make sure I'm not just focusing on the people in the front. I want the people in the back to feel connected as well. And very often, if you don't consciously think about that when you're talking, your natural tendency will be to talk to the people in the front. But then I learned a really great tip that when you're looking out, especially at a big crowd, if you look at someone, say, off to the left side, it looks to the audience like you're looking at a whole big section, like you're looking at just them. So I'll just go section by section if it's a big group, because then I'll look at the middle, in the middle of the middle, and then the people in the back all feel like I'm talking to them. And I also, and people have told me they love this, I come down from the stage. I talk to them. I give them prizes for participation.
Continue. Sorry, someone just came into the house. 1 second.
Oh, that's
Hello, how can I help you?
Oh, sorry. Your mom said knock and yell if he doesn't answer. Well, we're up the street. Walk in to see the floors because we're doing our floors.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Go for it. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Continue.
All right.
Continue, Sandy. Sorry about that.
That's all right. So
You were saying connecting with the people in the back.
I want to make sure that the whole, and I come down off the stage.
Okay.
So people are very surprised by that. But they love it. It's like, oh my gosh, she just came down from the stage and interacted with us. I'll ask them questions. If I don't have a roving microphone, I'll take the lapel mic off and put it, in front of them. I have prizes. In fact, wait a minute, I got to show you this. I tell them I love participation and I have presents. And this is a little cell phone holder in the shape of a beach chair. People love that. If you can give them just a little tchotchke, a little gift. People have told me, I normally don't participate in these things, Sandy, but I want that chair. So here's my thought. And they will share because and then they love that. And if somebody says something really cool, I'll say, oh my gosh, beach chair for Jerry, and I'll go and give them that. And the whole audience loves it. And that's virtual or in person. If it's virtual, I will mail them the beach chair or whatever it is that I'm giving. Yes, because I want them to feel that engaged and they love it. So I use polls, I use prizes, I use table exercises. I just ask by a show of hands who this, and you can get them thinking about, who's experienced this, and they will participate with you if you're authentic and if you look like you're really interested. And then here's what a lot of speakers do too. that I see that you got to be really careful for. You can't ask a question and then have somebody answer and then ignore the answer. Just go on to your next point. It's like, they just engaged with you. You need to acknowledge that answer. So make sure if they say anything, you just say, that's a great point. And it ties to my next point if you want to go on to the next one. So, but you can't ignore that if they do engage with you. And I see so many people ask them to engage, then they do, and then they act like they never said a word and go on to their next point. So,
And for you, you mentioned virtual speaking engagements. How is the journey from your perspective different, giving a virtual gig and speaking virtually and securing a virtual gig as opposed to an in-person?
well, now since COVID, people will often call and ask, do you do in person? Do you do virtual? And so they have in mind what they want. And I do whichever. I'll do hybrid too. Hybrid is a really tricky thing when you're in person and you've also got a virtual audience. You've got to ask them when you get there, where's the camera for the virtual audience? So that every once in a while, you're not just looking at the people in the room, you're also looking at that camera. And you say, for the audience at home, I'd like you to do this. And then you've got to make sure that somebody is near a computer so that if they're putting comments or questions into the chat, you tell them, please let me know if there are comments and questions in the chat. And I even give prizes to people in the virtual audience. So I'll give them prizes in the room, and then I'll say, all right, Michelle just got a prize. Make sure you get the organizers your address so I can ship it to you. And then I will give them those too. They really appreciate that because that virtual audience is very hard to engage them because so many things can, take their attention away. And if you're not even trying, so the meeting planners love it when a speaker can actually address the home audience as well as the one in the room.
And I don't mean to age you here with this question. But
I already aged myself, so I'm good.
I'm most curious about, through your speaking career and your professional speaking career, have you had certain speakers that you've paid attention to, that you've kind of looked at how they do it and you've taken pieces of, oh, they do this so well, I'm going to integrate this into my speech or integrate this into my biz ops? Or certain people maybe you've paid attention to, maybe like a Jim Rohn or someone like that, for example?
Well, yeah, there are so many. There are a few performance artists that I've taken things from. There's a gentleman who, he's absolutely amazing. He's an Emmy award-winning actor. Wow. And I see the way he moves around the stage and does things. So I watch all kinds of speakers, and I have taken performance tips from many, many, many speakers. And then we bring people into our National Speakers Association chapter, and some of them come in and tell us about marketing. I've done a marketing campaign based on one gentleman who came in and gave us a marketing thing with email sequences, so that you do 3 to 5 emails because people don't always see the first one. And he gave us what to say, how to say it, how you can tailor it to your own thing. And oh my gosh. So NSA is an amazingly giving organization. So I will encourage people, if you really do want to build a business and network and get some camaraderie, go to your local NSA chapter meetings and see who they're bringing in there as well, because we speak for each other all the time. In fact, we have an academy at ours, and I'm speaking on authorship and product development in March to them. So
you say authorship?
Authorship. Yes, I have 4 books.
Wow.
Yes, and it's a nice stream of income, but I'll tell you, it's not a huge stream of income. I mean, I'm not John Grisham, for Pete's sake, but it is an amazing marketing tool. I mean, I had one organization that I spoke to 300 people in the room in Washington, and there were 1,500 more all around the world on teleconference. And so I had a book. They bought a book for everyone in the room, the 300, because I had a book signing and everything afterwards, which was great. And then a couple of months after the program, they had to make sure they got their budget and everything, but they loved the program so much they emailed me and said, we want to order 1,500 more books. And I was like, are there 2 zeros after that? 15? because we want to send one to everyone who was on your program. I mean, it was amazing. The sales that can come from it. But then another one they had purchased 200 books for their entire organization. And last December, I got a call from one of their sister organizations who had gotten a hold of one of my books. They wanted a program on what my expertise was. They saw the book. They said, well, let's call this woman. I had an engagement, full fee virtual engagement in December, and I got another one with them in April. So it's a great marketing tool as well. So it's been phenomenal.
And looking at your speaking career chronologically, and then your decision to write the books and release the books, what did that decision-making process look like for you?
Well, it took me a while. In fact, my very first one that I told you that I did for the APC Administrative Professionals Conference, it was hosted or like sponsored by the American Management Association. Well, their people were in the room at my conference and offered me a book deal. Stupid me. I wasn't ready. I should have just said yes and figured out how to do it. I wasn't ready at that time to do the book deal. But afterwards, obviously when I didn't know those people anymore, I'm saying, I really have to get a book going. So I had gotten a book going on the real estate stuff, which by the way, got me a keynote at a big conference because they had a sponsor who was going to buy a book for everybody. And they didn't want a speaker who didn't have a book. So and it had to be on real estate and technology. I'm a techie girl. So I had written a book on get the knowledge out of technology for real estate professionals. So it worked out perfectly. And then when I did my other books, I did another one on It's My Dream and Who Am I to Stop Me? I did another one called The Invaluable Assistant. I did another one called Turn Your Workplace into a Wow Place. And the Invaluable Assistant one came about because I'd been doing that program for about 4 or 5 years. Everybody loved it. Why I hadn't turned it into a book yet, I don't know. But a couple of years ago, a group said, have you got a book for this topic? And I said, well, it's all up here in my head. And they said, well, we want you at our conference. And if you have the book ready, we will buy one for everybody in the room. And I said, okay. So I didn't have it done yet, but they called me on a Friday one time and said, we want your book. You're going to be speaking in a couple of months, but we need the book in 2 weeks because we've got to get it to everybody around the country. This was a virtual program. We have to get it shipped out to all of them. And I was like, okay, I can have that done. I was like, I am not blowing a 200 book deal that will also set me up for later. So I hung up the phone at 5:00 on Friday afternoon and I started writing and I finished the book on Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
I wrote almost the entire weekend. I got a hold of my editor. I had him edit it quickly for me. I went to Amazon, their Kindle that they have. They can print books very quickly, and I had them shipped out in 2 weeks. And so I didn't blow that order. And by the way, one of those books is the one that ended up in the sister company that just got me 2 more speaking engagements.
Wow.
Because I had a book. So it was quick and easy for me to write that one because I'd been presenting it for 5 years and I knew exactly the structure I needed. The first one, the real estate one, was very targeted. So that was a little easier to research and write too. The second one took me probably 2 years. It's My Dream and Who Am I to Stop Me? Because I didn't know how to position that one. And that's the one I could have gotten with the AMA if I had been on the ball enough to do it then.
And so it sounds like the books that you've been able to leverage to get these speaking gigs, there's a specific problem that they solve for a specific kind of person.
Yes.
Is that somewhat of a needed thing, part of writing a book as a professional speaker?
It's part of being a speaker. It's part of writing the book. It's part of doing any kind of training. See, pardon me. Here's something else that sometimes speakers make the mistake of thinking or saying, oh, I'm such a good speaker and I love to talk. I can talk on anything. You're not going to get hired to talk on anything. You're going to get hired because you're an expert on something. They don't want you to just blab at them, entertain them. They're spending big bucks to bring you in to solve a problem. So if you want to write a book that succeeds, if you want to have a speaking engagement that succeeds, and especially any kind of training, coaching, consulting that you want to succeed in, you need to figure out what problem am I solving and what's my expertise in that area. Where do I bring credibility? So don't ever let the words come out of your mouth. I can speak on anything. No, you can't. Not effectively and not for money. So many people think just because they're a good talker, they can be a good speaker, but people are not looking for that. They're looking for expertise.
And having all this experience you have, if you could go back to the Sandy at the very beginning of her journey and tell her, say, 2 things that would benefit her to know that you know now but didn't know back then, what would those 2 things be?
Boy, that's a tough one. I think if I go back to the way back Sandy, I don't think I would change too much, because there are times now as a speaker, I think, how come it took me so long to get here? I mean, it took me a very long time to get here. But then I think, wait a minute. Everything that I did and everything that happened to me contributed to making me who I am today, and to teaching me the tough lessons that I can now share and help other people, avoid. If I had just gone, hey, everything's fine and dandy, and then become a speaker without having any of these challenges, who would want to listen to that person? My life's perfect. I never made a mistake. No one wants to listen to that. They want to know that you're a real person. You've had the same challenges they're having, and they want to know how you overcame them, so that they might be able to take something from their lives or from your experience and apply it to their lives. So I think maybe I would just say, well, there is one thing. Don't be afraid to take some risks. I did take some, but I kind of avoid risk. I'm a very conservative kind of person when it comes to business and things. But I had a desktop publishing company before we had word, all kinds of really word processing everywhere. And my mom and I had built up a really good business. And then she got sick and had to go in the hospital. I probably could have had the first temp agency in Providence, Rhode Island, if I hadn't been too scared of success, fear of success. What am I going to do if it succeeded? My biggest clients in Boston. I never ran a business like that. I probably could have had a huge temp agency in Providence. There was nothing there, and we knew the word processing. We were both techie. So I guess I would say, don't be afraid to take some reasonable and appropriate risks. I've found out that very often the risks you don't take often cost you more than the risks you do. And you just don't know it till later. So that would be one of the biggest things. And then just keep your eyes open for lessons everywhere and start writing them down. Because all the things that happened to me, I share them now, and people are like, wow, they know I went through it. I didn't just read a book and say, oh, I'm giving you a book report. No, this is real life stuff that works. So write down the things that happen and look for the lessons you can take from it, because they will be very valuable to you in your speaking business when you're talking about those kind of things.
And from your experience, I don't know if this is just a personal thing or if this is more of a common thing, but the speed in which you go from inexperience to learning from that experience and changing your current behavior, how long is that gap for you now, after realizing the speed with which you need to execute changes?
Well, that now I recognize things a lot quicker than I ever used to. And part of that is just training my mind to look for it. Okay. Before you start training your mind, you're not in that habit. You let things go by and you don't even realize. And then later on, in hindsight, you're like, oh, that seemed like the worst thing that could ever happen, but it actually was the best thing that ever happened. And so when I look at something that feels really bad right now, instead of bemoaning it and, oh my gosh, woe is me, and being stopped by it for a while, I simply just say, you know what? I really trust that this is what is meant to be. This is what is supposed to be happening. I'm going to learn from this. I trust that whatever should be happening is what's happening, and I'm going to find out why later on, but what can I learn from it now, and how can I get there faster? So it's a matter of training your mind to be grateful for the experience rather than mournful that you've had it, to find out what you can learn quickly, to change and be flexible and nimble, just like the companies you're going to be talking to, and then apply it. Like, how do I go forward from here? And then how do I turn that into a story or a learning point or something? So right away, I start thinking about what can I teach other people from this too? Because if it's happening to me, it's happening to somebody else.
Hmm.
It's
And you
short.
say you're a very techie person.
Yeah.
You've seen tech grow and exponentially. How do you these days leverage technology for your speaking business?
I analyze and use the things that I sit and say, how will this benefit me? As a speaker, you're usually a pretty creative person.
Hmm.
And you love every bright, shiny new object that comes along. Well, you can't do them all. First, you'll go broke. Second, you won't create any content and you won't be able to do any marketing if you're constantly learning new technology and trying to figure out, how do I use this? And then you don't even know what you're going to use it for. So for me, I am very cautious when it comes to new technology. If I find something that works for me, I will stick with that. And then I will add one thing or a new thing that I think, okay, if I say, I see her building her business with LinkedIn, or I see her, doing this, or I see that gentleman just did an emailing campaign. Well, I'll look and say, what do I think is going to work best in my audience? I know my audience. How do they like to be corresponded with? Is this just another bright, shiny new object, or is it something new? Like right now, if you Google administrative professional speaker, I'm number one or number two. I have been for years. And yet, thank you. My husband and I studied SEO big time and got that page there. So I have a lot of business from that. You can't imagine the people who are emailing me all the time. Oh, your business isn't, number one on Google. And so we can help you. Your website isn't number one on Google. So we can help you. Well, it is in the things I care about. And so maybe it isn't but they're finding me for leadership. They're finding me for customer service and finding me big time for administrative professionals training. And so you just have to sit there and say, I know my audience. I know what's working. I want to know what this technology is going to do for me. And then I also research, is there another service that might be a little less expensive? Because sometimes these things that they're promoting are amazingly expensive. And you're paying hundreds of dollars every month and don't even know what you're getting out of it. I found something I was paying $1,400 a year for a particular LMS service. I just paid $67 lifetime for a different service. Has every single thing but one, which I don't even have to worry about right now, that the other one had for $1,400. So
which one was it? Was it Teachable or Thinkific?
Teachable, and it was an excellent service, but it was expensive. Voomly is the one I'm using now, and I got it for $67 lifetime. I don't know if the lifetime deal is still there, but they're still way less expensive than what there's many, many, many of them. Kajabi is another one. There's all kinds of them, and they're all excellent. But, maybe at the beginning of your career, especially, you don't need the most expensive thing. Here's another one. There's a couple that are very expensive email, CRM types of things. I pay $10 a month for MailerLite, and oh my gosh, I get everything I need. If I ever need to up the number of members I have, it's like, another $10 or something. But I see some of them at $100, $200, $300 a month for the same thing I'm paying $10 a month for. So do your research. There's so much tech out there. Just do your research.
I know we're running short on time here, so yeah. I'll ask this last question here, double-ended question. What advice, tips, guidance, knowledge do you have for the aspiring speaker, professional speaker, or business owner who speaks to grow their business? What advice do you have for that person? And then let's say I find that answer so valuable and I want to speak with you, I want to follow you somewhere, I want to be in contact with you. Where can I find you on the internet?
Okay. Well, the advice that I would give is just don't ever forget that you're a business that needs two things: marketing and direct sales efforts. You cannot, I mean, I know there are some people who have built their businesses just on social media. You pick any one of them and you're on there enough, maybe you'll get the business. I know people who are teaching that, and they've gotten one or two big engagements from that. And they're like, oh my gosh, you should get on here and spend all your time here. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't want just two engagements. I want a business that will sustain my lifestyle. So you have to, yeah, I do get on, pick the social media channels that you want to get on and try to be as consistent as possible, but do not rely on that alone. Going to conferences, emailing people with credibility, telling them who you've done this for before, what your expertise is. Email sequences do work. They're tough. You have to keep with it, but then just make calls. I know everybody hates cold calling, but do some, or at least do warm calling. Talk to people in your local area. See if there are local groups where you could even do a free speech on a very targeted thing where they can say, wow, that's fantastic. I know people who have built their careers on just that. They'll speak to a local organization, and boom, it's so valuable and so different that they get referred everywhere. So, but just remember, it's not an overnight process usually, and you can't do it with just marketing, like social media marketing. You have to actually do some sales, but be very targeted on what you're solving. Everything has to revolve around the problem you're solving and for whom.
Gotcha.
So,
where can I find you on the internet, Sandy?
Well, my website is called thewowplace.com because I help you turn your workplace into a wow place. But I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, X. I keep trying to call it Twitter, but I also have an Instagram channel. So I focus on those four.
Gotcha.
There's just too many to do them all.
Well, awesome. Sandy, thank you for taking the time to make this appearance today. We'll end the recording up here. Cheers, y'all.